Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in to talk about Last Dungeon, Episode 6 and Episode 5. So, here we are, Last Dungeon Boonies, the story of Lloyd and many other people. Anyway, for the last 2 weeks of episodes, uh, one thing I did before coming into this one, I checked out what people were saying on streaming sites, because those people tend to be a little bit more honest with what they're watching. And I was really happy just to see that everyone's kind of just, well, not everyone, but a good chunk, like maybe it's, let's say 70% of the comments are getting a little bit bothered by Lloyd, and they're pointing out things like how things are not very consistent. And you know what, honestly, in terms of consistency, actually, I think that is a relatively fair point. Not on Lloyd, but the story itself, just because of some of the things that are said out loud. It's just the story isn't consistent. But that ultimately comes back to that issue that I brought up weeks ago about this anime is really nice when it's the slice of life funnies, but when it's actually trying to set up any kind of serious thing, it just kind of breaks apart, and it really shouldn't be taken seriously. It's not really worthy of respect when it comes to any kind of thing, when it comes to setting up the dramatic situations. And I think that's going to be the note at the end of this anime season. When you have the first 6 episodes consistently failing at setup, there's no real reason to believe this is going to improve, at least not until after episode 8, because at episode 9, that's when they would start a new volume, and if they were listening to feedback, that's where the feedback would be applied. But yeah, nah, it's like there's significant fundamental issues here. That said, I liked episode 6 much more than I enjoyed episode 5. I find episode 5 to be the weakest of the two. And episode 6 has minimal troubles in general. Actually, I think for episode 6, I quite enjoyed Lloyd more, mostly because he wasn't as annoying as in episode 5. And now, let's get into that. Let's talk a little bit more. But before that, I want to just give you the preview. Episode 6, I think, legitimately has cool elements. And again, this anime is very much a mixed bag, and I am relatively excited to talk about the cool elements of episode 6 and of episode 5, because again, we have good stuff in here. It's just other things are so annoyingly loud that it makes it hard to really appreciate the good stuff unless you're really looking for it. But in terms of like the bad things, you know, in episode 5, I think the biggest thing is that we have a random girl just quite literally show up out of nowhere, which is, you know, obviously kind of funny. But this girl shows up out of nowhere. If she was just going to be a comedic thing, it's whatever. But the problem is, when this girl shows up, she's in the episode for less than 6 minutes, and the episode wants me to care about her. This girl comes in there, tells Lloyd that he can't do anything on his own, and then Lloyd internalizes that, which is insane. But that's par for the course for Lloyd, right? And then she has this weird little relationship with Mary that's her love, and then her love has been stolen, and it's like, yo, girl, I don't care about you. I only saw you for the last 4 minutes. Why should I care about you? And then like this whole thing with her having her love stolen, it's like, girl, you can barely form a sentence in front of this random witch. Why should anyone respect you? And it's like, it's that kind of thing. Last Dungeon doesn't really give you a lot to actually want to give the characters leeway. And when you see that girl, it's like, why should I care about you if the story itself doesn't care about you, in that they're shoving you in there in 5 minutes, and you're only really serving as a plot device to say that Shoma's brother is actually a bigger danger. And this is the part of, this is bad setup. That was a horrible setup. You have her coming hot, tell Lloyd something that's baseless, and then have her like freak out when Lloyd is just living with Mary. Like, why would you respect any kind of character like that? That's a waste of time character. Actually, Last Dungeon makes more sense if you say it's a collection of tropes that aren't really executed with any kind of plan, and instead are executed because that's what anime does. A lot of things make more sense if you apply it from there. And going on to Lloyd in that episode, this girl's like, you can't do anything by yourself, and then Lloyd's like, ugh. You know, and it's just an issue of, Lloyd, I sincerely don't care. You know, and I'm gonna bring up the counter example. In episode 6, Lloyd has a little moment where he flubs on the arrow spell, and then he does this thing where he's covering up, and it's like, oh Lloyd, oh it's okay, buddy. There's a fundamental difference between those two scenes. When Lloyd makes a mistake and he's embarrassed because he got tongue-tied, that's the good kind of vulnerability. That's actually, like, yes, that is legitimately something that it's worth being embarrassed about. But then when you have this girl tell him that he can't do anything on his own, should I care that Lloyd is so stupid that he can't internalize what it means that he is blowing up a part of the courtyard when everyone else is targeting a mannequin in episode 5? Am I supposed to internalize that he doesn't understand that he can flick away giant monsters? Even if he considers them pests, he's flicking them away. No, man, like, no. Lloyd's stupid. This is beyond stupid. This is stupid for the sake of the plot, and it's really annoying when you see it in episode 5, and that's why episode 6 is significantly better, because at least in episode 6, the Lloydisms are a little bit more under control. At least in episode 6, the Lloydisms make sense. At least in episode 6, and here's a big thing. Instead of just accepting that he was going to lose, Lloyd used magic multiple times. And that felt good, because that actually felt like a guy being clever about not wanting to lose instead of being whatever stupidity that Lloyd does on a regular basis. But ultimately, what I want to say with Lloyd is that, you know, if you dealt with a hypochondriac, and for those that don't know what a hypochondriac is, they're the kind of person that just says that everything's wrong with them. You tell them something about some random illness, and they're gonna be like, oh my god, I think I have this illness too. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because those kind of people, when they're having their moments, the general response from the people around them is just like, you know, it's an eye roll. And if you work with them, what's going to end up happening is that person's going to be just the workplace gossip, the main character of the gossip in the workplace. And that's the kind of energy that Lloyd has. Lloyd's going to be this person that's really stupid and you just kind of roll your eyes at, because it's like, why get involved in self-inflicted wounds? And that's what Lloyd essentially does. I am sure that Lloyd is the only person in this village that actually has bad common sense. At this point, it's still very much a mixed bag when it comes to Lloyd, but episode 6 shows a better implementation of Lloyd in general. Actually, I was really surprised in general that this guy could even fathom what it meant that a girl wanted to marry him. Honestly, with the way that he is, I'm surprised, legitimately surprised. But those are the Lloyd issues from episode 5. There's more significant issues, and this is again still with setup. So in episode 6, you have these people going into this random tournament, and like, don't even get me started how that tournament is premised. It's just stupidity abounds in every respect, right? But they have them going into this tournament. It's relatively serious because we do have a relatively serious plot line about this girl getting screwed over. And the thing that this girl does, the mercenary girl, is that she asks to learn healing magic. And this is quite literally, from what we see in the episode, moments before we go into the actual combat. And here is the weird thing. If you go back to episode 5, let me read this girl's lines. Hey, don't you know that healing magic is the hardest? Lots of people underestimate it and quickly give up. Also, so much can go wrong. So imagine being in a situation where this girl is talking about how hard healing magic is, but yet she's able to learn it just in, like, not even over the course of days, in quite literally less than an hour, most likely. It's quite literally, they see the sword and she's like, hey, I want to learn healing magic. Teach it, right? You know, the timeline is so undefined that we have to assume it happened in the same day, because why wouldn't it happen in the same day? But imagine being in that situation where someone who, after bumping healing magic up as being so dangerous, is just able to do it like that. What happened to underestimating it? If you tell me, like, actually that felt like underestimation of healing magic. And then she's able to cast a delayed healing spell? Yeah, right. But that's the bigger issue, and this is following what goes on with Mary in the earlier episodes, where the guy, despite looking for this woman forever, never went to the famous witch. Why should I take anything the characters say seriously when in the next episode they just ignore what they said? Why should I listen to when a character says something is hard when the same character that said it was hard just is able to learn it in one quick go in a situation where it seems like they learned it in the spur of the moment? No, there's nothing to respect there. And furthermore, going along with that kind of issue, I do find it really funny how some characters are redefining previous events. For instance, how that little informant guy that was working with the other school mentions that Mary is a shady witch or something like that. Let me get the right words here. Some shady character called the Witch of the East Side. And it's like, alright, you know, there's still room for interpretation there, but I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, this Mary is a character who was premised to us in the perspective of the other characters as being a famous information broker. You know, it's just really, it's kind of funny that this guy goes in with shady. And I mean, like, information broker can still be shady, but it's just like the way that he went about talking about her didn't kind of carry the same kind of level of respect that was premised when you had the Belt Princess coming in there. But I'm going to be careful with that one because that's open to interpretation. But it's just that kind of stuff. I do when you put everything together, you got some real problems with setup. And there was another situation in episode 6 where you had the mercenary girl using the magic to beat up her foster person. And I'm thinking, like, okay, you just got into a spam fight. Why would you go through the trouble of... And I gotta be really careful here, but like, the entire situation was asinine. She put a fire gem or a magic crystal into her arm, right? And before that, though, she was launching multiple fireballs, even though the mithril arm should be sucking out her magic at all times. My question is, why lodge the crystal into your arm when you could have just feigned that you ran out of magic, because you had magic to launch the fireballs multiple times? Why shove it in your arm when you could have held it in your palm, and if you really wanted to punch her, you could have still done the hit and then just open your palm and just launch the fireball into her face? Also, how did no one see that you punched her first before you launched the fireball? Also, how is the belt not magical? How can the belt be called a physical item? The belt's magical. What happens if people start lobbing earth whips? It's still made of magic. What if someone lobbed earth balls at the other person? Would that be considered physical? Nah, man. Again, in terms of setup, the entire thing is asinine. And when it comes to the whole situation with the girl and the healing magic and the weird fire attack, it's just a situation of why go so far when you could have quite literally tricked her, punched her in the face, and then launched the fireball normally. It's just asinine, and it only really makes sense if you take it from the perspective of they're doing this because they need this to particularly work. Now, mind you, there are good things here. For instance, I like how the story about, or the cautionary tale about healing magic, that being that you could get something stuck in your arm, came back to be a weapon. That's why this asinine maneuver had to happen. It's because they wanted to make a lesson. They wanted to like connect the arc. That's why it happened. I do appreciate the stuff that happened with Lloyd and the martial artist, especially when she's talking about how she knows what Kunlun is, and how she said that they were martial artists that studied under the same school. Lloyd questions it, but it seems like this girl probably got direction from someone in the village. So that's pretty neat. I'm also relatively... I also appreciated that role, and I remember her name. I appreciated that she was being manipulated behind the scenes. I do have to question, like, why are you playing such a long game manipulating a person from when they're a child, and manipulating them into this particular situation? It seems like an unnecessarily convoluted setup so far. But when I'm looking at the episode in terms of what I like from the story perspective, I do like these little movements. I do like the attempt at the connection there, bringing the lesson about the negatives of healing and making it a positive. I just don't appreciate the intelligence that goes into making these plots. I think this is definitely a writer that forces the setup to happen a particular way because they need the setup to go down. Like how it's just an issue where the narrative is ultimately bending the story a little bit too much. Also, the whole situation with the Holy Sword is just like, it's funny that they brought it out, but it's like, why is the Holy Sword being offered up in a tournament when you're just going to put it back in the castle by the end? No, there is just a lot of questionable, serious choices that the comedy just doesn't excuse. But I do have to say again, you know, I can appreciate the little efforts at the story. There are some legitimately interesting things going on here in the background. And also, gotta respect that, I think his name is Alan, right? Like the big guy. I like him. I really like him. I think he's cool. But yeah, overall, I think we need more of what episode 6 did with Lloyd. Not more of what episode 6 did with, to force a message. Because that part's just kind of stupid. But Lloyd in episode 6, I think we need to keep this kind of energy. And stay away from episode 5 Lloyd, who is having dilemmas. Just random people saying things to him on baseless accusations, or like just from baseless ground. So yeah, if there's anything I can say, definitely going forward, I'm hoping to see more episode 6 energy as opposed to episode 5 energy. Just because episode 6 is just so much better with Lloyd in general. So I can't take anyone seriously. I don't feel it was fair for the Belt Princess to be disqualified. It's magic. It's just physical magic. It's just a giant. It's just, you know, they're bending it for the purposes of the narrative. But whatever. Anyway, guys, let me know what you thought of episode 6 down below. My final conclusions are mixed bag still. Setups for drama are still really bad. Lloyd had a good showing on this one. The comedy is still on point. And yeah, actually, it's actually pretty funny that episode 6 did not follow up on that random girl from episode 5. I mean, she's probably going to show up because we still have episode 7 and 8 that would cover this volume. But it just goes to show how pathetic that person is. Anyway, everyone, let me know what you thought down below. And until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.